If you are looking for a budget brawl deck or one that can compete in the Artisan Midweek Event, you have come to the right place. I have designed and tested 3 budget brawl decks. They have 0 rares, and we're going to talk about the card selection, the play patterns, and I'm going to tell you how to upgrade them if you want to add some rares. So let's go! Welcome to the Attic. Manadad here. This is the channel where I usually say play what's good in Magic. We're not going to play any games today. I'm just going to talk through decks. But this is a channel where we explore what is fun in Magic. And Artisan Brawl is a really fun format. It's any of the Artisan formats I'm finding on Arena are very fun. I don't think they've actually done an Artisan Brawl event yet as I do this, but I played these decks against decks that have rares and it's been fun. So I can say Artisan Brawl should be quite fun. So of course you're looking for powerful uncommon commanders. One of the most popular, Dina Soul Steeper, maybe surprisingly to some people, but the ability to, whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. Those little pings add up. In Brawl, you and your opponent each have 25 life. The extra life is nice for you. The extra life off of them is very bad for them. So we have a lot of ways to capitalize in this deck on Dina's ability. If you're interested in the other decks, you can skip ahead, but we're going to talk through how Dina works and why I've chosen some of these cards in the deck. Okay, let's get into it. We got a range of stuff at the 1-drop slot. We've got cheap creatures like Banehound. It's lifelink, it's haste, it's gonna, as long as it can get in, it's gonna be good for Dina's ability. Dina has this ability to pay 1 and sacrifice another creature. We don't really care about getting extra power on Dina, but sometimes our creatures are gonna benefit from being sacrificed, like Serrated Scorpion. When it dies, it's gonna deal 2 damage. We're gonna gain life. Then opponent's gonna lose life again because we gain life as long as Dina's out. Stuff like Okiba Reckoner Raid, those extra pings, we're going to gain the life. They're going to get extra pings as long as Dina's out. Stuff like that. Night Market Lookout, it's going to do extra pings whenever it becomes tapped, which is nice. We don't have a lot of ways to protect Dina. Dina's very cheap, very easy to get down. It's a little bit tricky for a 2-mana commander, one of each of your 2 colors in Artisan Brawl with the mana base. We'll talk about that in a bit when we get to the mana base. But just so you know, we have stuff like Springleaf Drum or some things that will fix Ornithopter Paradise, Arcane Signet, things like that. But where were we? We were talking about Malakir Rebirth. Oh, okay. So tap land, obviously, and it's a way to protect Dina. We don't have a ton of ways to protect Dina, but because she's cheap, right? The second time we cast her, she's only going to be 4. Third time, 6. We maybe don't care as much if opponent wants to burn out all their removal on Dina. That's fine. We actually care more is if they're removing stuff at the higher end of our curve, like Epicure Blood, Witherbloom, Pledge Mage, Falcon Wrath Noble, these kind of things that come down, they get its value over time. We'd rather they stuck around. Blood Researcher is going to be really big as Dina, as we gain life with a bunch of things and trigger Dina, etc. Okay, back to the 1-drop slot. I was talking about creatures that are easy to sacrifice. Vampiric Rites is very nice for that. We have some removal that's sacrifice-based, Spark Harvest and Bone Shards. Tameo Safekeeping is a protection spell. We have a little bit of ramp here with Elvish Mystic, Land of War Elves. When these guys are not useful, we can sacrifice them, and hopefully we'll have something like a Blood Artist out, so we're going to get some benefits from sacrificing them. Spectrum Sentinel, just an incremental life gain for 1 mana. Fountain of Renewal, at the beginning of your upkeep, gain a life. Play that turn 1, play Dina turn 2, and you start just pinging your opponent down. Blood Artist is one of the all-stars of the deck. Because Demonic Tutor is a rare in this format, I don't have it in there, but if you do upgrade and put Demonic Tutor, actually, I don't think Demonic Tutor is allowed, but if you upgrade and put a tutor in your deck, you go get Blood Artist, probably is one of the main things you're going to get. Bitter Triumph is another thing where we can sack a creature or pay 3 life. Deep Cavern Bat is an evasive lifelink creature. It's also going to disrupt our opponent's game plan. Go for the Throat, Heartless Act, Infernal Grasp. We got all these cheap black removal spells. This deck is very in the artisan level. I mean, obviously, once you're up against decks with lots of rares, it gets a lot harder, but you can still win with this deck. I've done it. But one of the great things about running black is you get all these uncommon and common removal spells. And you know, if your opponent just draws a bunch of land and a few creatures, you remove all their creatures, they're done. They concede. The Life of Toshiro Umezawa has a gain life trigger, and it's going to help us ramp to a big spell potentially. Return to action can protect Dina if we have it. If we have the mana up, Tithing Blade, when it flips, each opponent loses 1 life. We gain a life at the beginning of each upkeep. Nice little one. Trespasser's Curse is one of the cheaper. They lose, we gain effects. Again, Dina is doubling all these things up. What you kind of want to do is just slow down the game, get a couple of these things down, and just grind opponents out. It's a very Golgari strategy in that sense. Vault Scourge. Zulaport Cutthroat is the budget blood artist, sort of. We got Druid class, which whenever we play a land, we're going to gain a life. Same thing with Kazandu Nectarpot. Prosperous Innkeeper is going to gain us life when creatures come down. It's also going to help fix us with the treasure and ramp us. Terra Sunder, another great uncommon removal spell. For 4 mana, we get anything. For 2 mana, we can exile an artifact or enchantment, which, you know, again, if we're trying to slow down the game, opponent plays that mana rock, they're trying to ramp into their big, you know, 7 mana commander, like an Atali or something. Remove that artifact, slow them down. Maybe you get a turn or two where they have to wait to get their lands to get up to their commander. That's basically maybe all it takes when you're just draining them constantly for 2, then 3, then 4, then 5 every turn. Arcane Signet Diamond Mare is another one that we can set on a color. If you're curious what color to choose for Diamond Mare, definitely black. We got 44 spells with black and 17 with green. Acolyte of Aklazats is a creature sack thing that is a drain 1, gain 1. Again, this is probably an easy cut once you're upgrading to rares. Anything that is very low impact and higher up at the curve. The lower at the curve stuff is actually pretty strong. Bastion Remembrance I would not cut, however. This is pretty good impact. Good value. You see that in decks with rares. Bell Stinger is a sack. We can draw some cards. You know, trade in all that life we're gaining for some cards is not a bad idea. Marauding Blight Priest. This is sort of like, you know, copy number 2 of our commander. Whenever we gain, opponent loses 1. Morbid Opportunist. If you're running black in the Artisan Brawl event, highly encourage you to run Morbid Opportunist. This will just sit out and gain you cards unless they remove it right away. So it's definitely a must-answer threat. Bloodthirsty Aerialist and Blood Researcher are sort of like the Ajani's Pride mates of this deck. We've got Social Climber. Oh, this is another one that's been alchemized. I think in regular paper it's a 3/2, but similar to Prosperous Innkeeper, we're just going to gain life when creatures enter. Cultivate for ramp, but, you know, not necessarily hugely important when you've got Dina, but you might just want to be aware Cultivate is in this format. There is a uncommon version of it now on Arena, so this is legal in an Artisan format. Lurking Roper is one that people probably don't expect, but whenever you gain life, it can untap, so it can be a nice thing. Big 4/5 body for 3 mana, you hit with it, and then opponent comes to, you know, crack back or something. You do one of your instant speed things that gains life, you know, untap it, eat their creature. They'll probably hate that. Sylvan Shepherd is a nice repeatable late life gain thing. Again, it has to attack to unlock that, so not as powerful in a format with rares, but in a format with just uncommons and commons, it gets a lot better. Bontu's Monument is going to make our black creature spells 1 mana less to cast. That, as you can see, our deck is pretty low curve. That's not that great, but again, when you cast a creature spell, it's a drain 1, gain 1 effect. Cursed Witch can flip and comes in a curse. Spells you cast that target enchanted player cost 1 less to cast, and at the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, that player loses 1 life, you gain 1 life. Ill-Gotten, Revenge of Ravens is a really... If you've never played against Revenge of Ravens, this card is a nightmare to deal with, especially if you've got a deck with a bunch of little creatures, which a lot of these decks will be, these token decks, you know, your Jetmirs or whatever. Revenge of Ravens is a nightmare for them to do because, you know, when you're attacking for 1 but you're losing 1 and the opponent's gaining 1, it's like negating the attack, and then a 2 power creature is like almost like a 1 power creature attacking. It gets, the math gets really annoying. So great for us to have, annoying for the opponents. Soul Enervation, this is a fairly new card here from MKM. Target creature gets -4/-4, and then it just sticks around, and whenever 1 or more creature cards leave the graveyard, we're going to do the drain 1, gain 1 thing. And of course, Mortality Spear often is going to cost 2 mana less in this deck because we're gaining life all the time. So it's a nice little uncommon removal. Epicure of Blood. Moldervine Reclamation. In my testing, this was awesome. The gain life and draw a card. I mean, it's essentially Morbid Opportunist for 2 more mana. But if you stick it down, we've got so many little creatures that we don't mind losing. Drawing the cards, keep refilling our hand, getting those little life gains is pretty awesome. And Witherbloom Pledge Mage is also going to just get us that incremental life gain as we cast instants and sorceries, and be just a big, beefy body to hit people. Of course, we got 1 gain land here, the Swamp Forest one, Riveteer's Overlook. You could put in other ones that only get forest or only get swamp. We got Jungle Hollow, which gains some life. And Tomb of the Spirit Dragon, which can gain us life for colorless creatures, just as an interesting thing. But it's kind of tricky. I'm playing a ton of tap lands in this deck because it's Artisan, but as you upgrade, obviously, like the mana base is going to be one of the key things that you target first when you're looking at rares. Try to get some of these rare dual lands in that come into play untapped. It's probably better off. I do like stuff like Hunter Maze, or even better, Hidden Nursery. If we flood out, whatever, if we have nothing else to do on our turn, that 5 mana tap, Discover 4 is pretty nice. Bajuka Bog is pretty good. It's just a, it's just a win the game button against the right deck. So always good to include in any of your black decks. And we got some cycling lands. That's about all I could say about Dina. If you are a person who wants to upgrade these decks, and I'll probably say this on each of them because I don't know if people skipped ahead, so apologies if this is repetitive, but there is a site, a Discord site called Brawl Hub. Go online, look it up, go find the invite. Every commander, I mean, not every commander, but every commander that's really competitive, there's a nice little discussion from really good deck builders about how to build that commander, the merits of different cards. You can see the lists of people that are winning in competitive Brawl with the deck. So if you want to go upgrade any one of these commanders, and these are all commanders that people have worked on the Brawl Hub, go to the Brawl Hub, find the commander, look at the lists of stuff that, probably the latest list that people have, and you will get great ideas for rares and how to adjust the deck and how to make it super, super tuned and competitive. So that is my recommendation for Dina and for the rest of the decks. All right, let's go to deck number 2. All right, let's talk about Imoti, Celebrant of Bounty. It's a 5 mana 3/1, but it has Cascade. So it's like a 5 mana bring a friend, bring something, for 4 mana or cheaper, and spells you cast with mana value 6 or greater have Cascade. So if it sticks out on the battlefield, look out. You're going to have a deck thick with really, really big spells, and then a lot of ramp. Imoti usually cascades into a ramp spell, which gets you up to casting some giant, absurd spell. This deck is very popular in regular Brawl. It loses a lot by going to Artisan, but I think in the Artisan format is still going to be very, very strong. The reason is ramp is always good, and just big, beefy creatures. Obviously, we don't get all the red and the blue and the green and the colorless bombs with the mana value 6 or greater. But if you're playing with rares, it's easy to just go into your collection, whatever you've got at the top end in blue and green, throw that into this deck, and you have a very powerful and strong deck. It's a very popular commander for people to play, even though it's an uncommon. So let's talk about the deck. First thing to note is if you want to find mana value 5 or greater, the search is CMC greater than 4. Because that'll be 5, or well, actually 6 or greater would be 5. So CMC greater than 5. And you can just go through and you can look at the cards you have in your collection, and see what do you want to play. A lot of, that's an uncommon, but a lot of these decks play like stuff that bounces the whole board, like Flood of Tears, stuff like that. And then, of course, big, end the turn spells, big finishers. Mind's Desire, we have some of these. Embolus's Clutches. We'll go through that. Karn's Temporal Sundering would be an example of a rare that this deck would play. But we're playing Artisan. So, what do we got? We're going to just go through the cards really quick. You can jump ahead to the next deck if you like. I think it's kind of fun to just look through what cards are in the deck. We got Utopia Sprawl. Look, even in Artisan Brawl, we've got 1 mana ramp here. We got a lot of 2 mana ramps, Scrap Gorger, Caryatid, into the north. A lot of these things are in a regular just deck with Imoti, with rares, up the Beanstalk. Some new fun stuff that maybe the regular Imoti deck can't fit, stuff like Zimone, Simic Charm. But we've got all these 2 mana rocks that fit in here. Obviously can't run Iron Crag because that's a rare. This version of Imoti, if you stuck through it, here's what you get. You get a little secret here. I did a little secret dragon sub-theme. There are enough uncommon dragons, and we've got these Jade Orb of Dragonkind, Lapis Orb of Dragonkind in the format. We're going to give our dragons are going to scry, and we're going to give them hexproof and +1/+1, which is nice. Cultivate obviously is good. Entish Restoration is a new card you might not have seen. You're going to sack a land, search your library for 2 basic lands, put them tapped. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, not difficult in this deck, search your library for up to 3 basic land cards, put them onto battlefield tapped. So it's like a super Cultivate or a super Harrow. Garrick's Uprising is nice with our big creatures. Somberwalled Sage can actually tap for 3 mana to cast a creature. This is a weird one, but and it definitely, when you're playing against decks that have rares, this gets removed very, very quickly, let me assure you. So people take this threat seriously. Tireless Provisioner is nice. As you're landfalling here, you're going to make some treasures and ramp. Kiora is nice. You're going to draw cards, and you're going to untap lands. Risen Reef, it's a mythic uncommon. Troyan, Gutsy Explorer, Palladium Mirror here. Circuitous Route. You can't play these 4 mana ramp spells in many decks, but you can in here. Thunderous Snapper is nice. Going to draw cards as we cast these big spells. Hedron Archive. And of course, Tatyova is another alternate version of this kind of Simic great stuff deck. Tatyova will be a strong commander in this format, no doubt. So another one, if you like this kind of thing, but maybe don't really like the Imoti Dragons thing I've done, you could build around Tatyova. So what do we got? We got Balloon's Gatekeeper. I love these adventure creatures where you're going to get a cheaper sorcery in addition to the expensive creature. So cast bounce the creature with entry denied, and then later, after we got Imoti down, play Balloon's Gatekeeper, Cascade, just do crazy stuff. Draconic Lore is dragon payoff here. Archive Dragon is a nice big dragon. One of the most powerful things you can do in Commander, whether you got rares or not, is steal your opponent's commander. Bolus's Clutches is pretty nice. Gain control of a permanent, and I believe we have, yes, Lay Claim, enchant permanent, gain control of a permanent. So even just stealing your opponent's really good, like Mana Rock that taps for 2 or something, even if they don't have a commander that you want to steal, is backbreaking. Absolutely backbreaking. We got some of these Lord of the Rings things that can cycle. We've got Emerald Dragon. We've got the Tanuki can cycle itself to get a land. Green Dragon. Quick Beam from... we've got this from Woe, which is another adventure creature. Topiary Panther. Shardolin Dragon. This is one you can definitely replace once you start putting rares in. God Pharaoh's Statue is one that the regular Imoti plays. This is another one that's just backbreaking for opponent. If you can ramp this out, gets this out on like turn 4 or something, just really ridiculous. Runaway Boulder is another one you can easily replace, but it's kind of fun to pay 6 mana and do 6 damage. Blue Dragon, Into the Story, can cost less than 7, which is nice. Mirror Shell Crab can be a counter spell if we don't have the mana to play it right away. Scholar of Ages is a nice value card. Get back all those spells that we want. Sword Coast Serpent. Beanstalk Giant is a great one in this deck because it's ramp, and then it's going to give us a creature that we can play for a lot of mana. Brambleword, Dread Linorm. If you played Limited, you'll recognize a lot of these. I put some of my favorite Limited top-end beaters into this deck. Sifter Worm. We got Colossal Sky Turtle, which can be cycled. Wretched Griff. There's a couple more of these emerge creatures, which I just didn't have room to put in, but you can put them in if you want. Treasure Cruise, legal in this format, and a common. Bookworm, Titanoth Rex, because why not have an 11/11 trample? We can always cycle it. And in the deck, we got in the mana base, nothing that exciting. You got these decks that can seek that are alchemy legal, that are also legal in this format. Things of that nature. Really fun deck. I love ramping out to just giant creatures and just having 20 mana to spend in a turn and drawing a ton of cards. It's the Simic thing, but an Imoti is one of the best ways to do it, and you can do it with just commons and uncommons. So hope you enjoyed this budget Imoti and the upgrades. Let's go to deck number 3. Balmor. Balmor is one of my personal favorite commanders on Arena ever. I mean, 2 mana, 1/3. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, each creature you control gets +1/+0 and gains trample until end of turn. It's little weenie attacks plus spell slinger, and when you draw the right mix of spells and creatures, this deck can kill somebody as quickly as turn 3. I have a video playing Balmor with the more tuned competitive brawl list. You can see it. What's great about Balmor for Artisan Brawl, and why Balmor is my pick to be the top competitive commander. If I had to say off the top of my head, what's going to be the one that gets the most wins the quickest in this event that's coming up, the Artisan Brawl event, I would say Balmor. The reason is the competitive brawl deck version of Balmor already is mostly commons and uncommons. It's a bunch of cheap creatures, a bunch of cheap spells. Where you really lose is the mana base. That's really hard because it is a 2 mana commander. Once again, you get to have some times where you draw, you don't get the right colors or whatever. Use your mulligans liberally. That's all I can say. Balmor and Symmetry Sage are already a good combo in one of the top historic decks. Is It Wizards? So if you played Is It Wizards, you know that's a really strong deck in historic. You'll recognize a lot of the cards from it, like we got Birthday Escape here. I mean, there's not a lot to say. the strategy is pretty clear. If you play the deck, you'll see very much. We have evasive creatures, not just cheap creatures, but evasive creatures. Terramander is one you might consider replacing, just because the chances that you adapt it are low, because you usually win before you have a chance to. But anyways, it's a 1 mana flyer for 1. Siren Stormtamer is nice because it can protect Balmor in the right case. Slitherblade. I mean, if you're an opponent up against this deck, what you want to do is remove all those little creatures as fast as you can. Because if opponent builds up 2 or 3 creatures, slams down Balmor, they've got a couple cards in hand, they're going to just unleash on you and kill you in 1 or 2 turns. That's just how it is. In terms of the spells, you want spells that draw a card. Note which ones are sorcery that you have to play pre-combat. Ancestral Anger is one. It's a little bit of a duplicate as long as you got Balmor out because the trample and everything, but it's gonna redraw you. So you're gonna try to redraw into the sorceries. Also, what's good is if we can find one of the spells here, like Escape Velocity comes back from the graveyard, but that's not an instant or sorcery. But like Faithless Looting has flashback. So spells that you can cast twice are also really strong in Balmor. Sometimes you just need that one last spell. Your hand is empty, but if you've got it in the graveyard. A new thing for Balmor, a little bit of new tech. If you haven't played Balmor recently, Frantic Scapegoat is fantastic. What else can I call out? I mean, look at all these 1-drops. We're just going down and down and down. Rohirrim Lancer is fairly new since I last recorded a Balmor. Satyr's Cunning can come back from the graveyard. That's one of those ones that is maybe better than it looks just because of the ability to recur it. Then at the 2-drop slot, our commander is a wizard, so Mentor's Guidance is going to be nice. This is we do have alchemized versions of cards in here, but I actually think that, well, there's got to be at least one alchemy card in here. I usually try to build the decks that I present to you with as few alchemy cards as possible, because I know some of you don't like alchemy cards and some of you want to build them in paper. So I do try to do that, but just be aware that some of these versions are alchemy versions, and definitely if you're trying to build this in paper, take a look through and cut out anything that needs to get cut out. For example, here, this is an alchemy card, Accident Prone Apprentice. It's got a spell on one side, a creature on the other. Very useful for this deck because, as I said, we want to get the right mix of creatures and spells. Electrostatic Infantry, Fists of Flame, Kiln Fiend. You know, there are a couple rare spells and creatures. If you check the Brawl Hub, you'll see that, you know, more tuned versions of this deck will run. But Young Pyromancer, Third Path Iconoclast, Sprite Dragon, Expressive Iteration is legal in this format. All these things are in the professional historic. Oh, excuse me. Are in the competitive version. I'm just going to cut this one short because I need to take a drink, but thanks for joining me here in the attic. I've been Manadad, reminding you, Magic is a game so fun, even parched throats dads can enjoy it. Adios.